Welcome back. You're watching JK Investigates. Now, sports and gambling have always gone sort of hand in hand, and in recent years, that bond has become ever more apparent. Take the Premier League, for example. In the 2002-03 season, Fulham were the only team to have the logo of a gambling firm plastered on their kit. In this case, it was Betfair.com. Now, take a look at this. 20 years on in the 2022-23 season, 8 teams had gambling firms displayed on their kits. Bournemouth had Daffabet, Brentford had Hollywood Bets, Everton Stake.com. Take a breath, JK. Fulham W88, Leeds SBO Top, and then Newcastle United with Fun 88, Southampton with Sportsbet, and the mighty West Ham with Betway. Blimey, just so you realise, that's 40% of the entire league. But not for long, my friends. The Premier League announced early this year that as of the 26-27 season, teams will no longer be displaying gambling logos on the front of their shirts. However, and it's a case of reading the small print, of course, betting firm logos can still be displayed on the sleeves of these shirts, just not the front. Does that make a difference? Is that enough? I want to discuss gambling in its entirety. Back with Ellie Mae O'Hagan, Abby McGregor, and I'm also joined by, I'm going to call him an avid sports gambler. Some would say a legend, Harry Finlay. Welcome, one and all, Harry. How did gambling, sports gambling, first enter your psyche? What happened? How did you get into it?
Well, it was the horses and it was other forms of gambling first. Because when I was obsessed with football as a 5-year-old, but football betting was never conducive with betting at all until my teenage years. And I was one of the first people who would be betting on football hackers and football when it was just in the early years in the late 70s. And football, of course, now has taken off. And the big advantage it's got, the Premier League, the reason why Premier League is so successful and so synonymous with football is also that in the rest of the world, the illegal markets in the Far East, they use the English Football League and other leagues now as well as a roulette table. They bet to 3% and 2%, 4%. So punters all over the world, not so much in England where we play to the more orthodox 14% Ladbrokes and Betfair stuff, but which is low margin. But football's become an avenue for low margin.
Does gambling, the association of sports with gambling, does it bring benefit to the sports industry, or is it just a money?
It's a knock-on effect, really, Jay. I think a lot of the success with the Premier League clubs does actually fund from the illegal markets because, the reason why the English Premier League is so popular in Asia, for example, is because, like I say, they bet to much lower margins. And I believe that punters nowadays, unlike 40 years ago when they didn't know the odds, I believe that the lower margins are what entices people in.
Well, it's quite interesting what you said, Ellie, because I was a bit shocked. You said you gamble, but you gamble on politics and you rarely get it wrong. That's insider information, isn't it? It's insider trading.
No, it's just being able to read the runes. It's just, I think, the point that I was trying to make is that I rarely gamble, and when I do, I gamble on something that I feel...
But he would tell you that and you would support this as well, a successful gambler, right? This is my point about the whole show. He might have one bet a year. It might be 5-4 or even money, and they'll lay it out and they know it's going to win. That's a fact. We're talking about the people who sit in bookies, right, in the old days, back on 6 dog meetings, 6 horse race meetings and do their dough. And then there's cash points, and then they can get credit, and then they can go online. That's the danger. But what Harry said at the beginning of this part, wasn't it, was that you said we can't label everybody as an addict and a problem gambler. There are people who can gamble healthily.
But what I was saying in the earlier segment is that while I agree, actually the majority of people are not problem gamblers, the industry relies on addicts. That's where it makes money. It needs people to become addicted. And that might only be a small proportion of the overall population that gambles. Like, more people gamble like I do than gamble like that.
Well, if
everybody gambled like I did, the industry would go bankrupt. It needs people to become addictive. That's why it plies addicts with free money. That's why it sends them designer handbags. That's why it begs them to come back and start betting. What would you say
to that, Abby?
I think the big problem is that everyone's looking for someone to blame. Is it the government? Is it the addicts? Is it the advertisers? Is it the gambling firms? The fact is that some people are addicted. That is the way that they are. That's not a disparaging accusation, but we have to accept that people gamble in different ways. Some do so very harmfully, and they're in the minority. Everybody else can gamble quite freely.
Can I come back on that, actually? Because I did a report for class when I was director of class, and we interviewed lots of different people who had problematic gambling habits. And actually, yes, a lot of them did meet the criteria that you've just described. But there was a group, and it was primarily single mums who were at home alone at night with not much to do, who didn't have any history of addiction, and they became addicted alarmingly quickly to gambling. And
we haven't got a lot of time, but I think there's a massive difference, and I want to bring Harry in on this, between online gambling and what it was. If we take it back to sports, here's a question for you. The Premier League is beamed round the world, as you said. If there are gambling shirts on the front of all these football matches shown to billions of people, is that dragging people into gambling? Yes or no?
Not around the world directly, no, because a lot of those shirts in the Premier Leagues are English-based. Some of them are.
All right, but is it encouraging people? I mean, we don't do cigarette gambling. We don't do cigarette advertising.
It's encouraging people, otherwise they wouldn't spend money on the adverts.
I think the bigger problem with the adverts are not where they are placed on the shirt or what time the adverts are. I think in gambling, education is a big problem, Jeremy. And I think that punters need to be educated.
By whom?
Well, what they don't need is Jeff Stelling. Jeff's a great lad in that, but these celebrities promoting things like Build a Bet, promoting the Ladbrokes, the Ladzackers and all that, promoting bets that they know the Build a Bet and Cash Out, which these firms advertise, is the worst value any punter can get. Cash Out now is one of the biggest winners for bookmakers.
But they're not illegal. This is my problem. I think it's very, very easy.
It should be illegal to be going on TV and telling people what good value Build-A-Bet is when everyone knows it's the worst value in the world. And what we should be doing, people like me and you perhaps, Jeremy, should be sitting down and telling people, look, if you're going to bet on... You can win betting on football. Young people, football punters can bet on football exactly like Ellie bets on politics.
But the argument's not whether you can win or not. I mean, I've got a thing that I have to say... I was told years ago, and I don't know whether Harry would agree. I used to have a problem, and I still bet. And the difference is, and I genuinely mean that, I was told by an old mate of mine, you should only gamble what you can afford to lose. And it's that desperation to get it back or have the big hit or go to the cash point or look at the glamorising or what I can... That's the problem, but I don't quite know how you are supposed, Abby, to work out that that person might become a complete addict and a problem person and that person's just in control of it. Who's supposed to police that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first thing you have to do is you have to separate out the cognitive clinical stuff to this kind of quasi-sociology stuff, because the argument about marketing, that assumes that humans have no free will.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we are at the complete mercy of what is marketed to us. And if the problem was the product, if the problem was the gambling product that's being advertised to us, why is it that 63% of those who are gambling addicts also cite a problem with alcohol? It's not the product, it's not the advertising, it's the cognitive structure of the addict.
I've literally got 20 seconds. Should gambling be more regulated, yes or no?
Yeah, of course it should, because if you are somebody that is more prone to addiction, it's obviously going to make it worse if there's posters for gambling companies.
Yes or no, more regulation?
Educate punters, no casinos, no online casinos for those vulnerable women that Ellie was talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Casinos online should be banned. There should be none of them. And we need to, especially the Gambling Commission and people that Ellie are working with, there needs to be a big... The casinos, games of luck, games of chance are separate to games of skill. And horse racing,
guys, I could sit here with you all night. Harry Finley, Abby McGregor, Ellie Mae O'Hagan. For now, thank you.